Okay, so you've seen me build out client systems and give you the walkthroughs and everything, but what systems do you actually need? Well, in my opinion, there's 10 systems that every single coaching business needs, regardless of what level they're at. There's many more routes that we can take from there, but these are the 10 core systems I make every single coach I work with build, and for very good reason. So I'm going to run you through all the 10 systems and show you kind of exactly what they are, what they should have. So even if you wanted to kind of build them in your own way, you're going to have a good idea about what to kind of start with and what order to do it in as well. So the problem is, a lot of you have probably seen like all of these here. You're probably familiar with every single one of them. So we have Trainerize, we have TrueCoach, Kahunas, Everfish, we have My PT Hub. All of these things are tools that they try to be the ultimate tool. And the reason that you've probably tried more than one of these is because they all let you down in some sort of a way where Trainerize is like, oh, right, it's really cool. We can do all this stuff. But client management, there's not much stuff and there's no check-ins. Kahunas, they're like, oh, we added check-ins in, but it's basic check-in forms. And then when it comes to getting information out of there, we can't really do it. Then we have stuff like Go High Level, where it's like, hey, I'm going to do everything. I will be the ultimate software. And then after a while of using it, you realize that it's not actually that good. It just tries to do everything and does a poor job at pretty much all of it. So what is the actual answer to it? Well, you need to set up proper systems. Like these are all just apps and software. We need to have a system where there's a process involved for all of these, and we're using different tools to fix pieces of the process. And that is really where you're going to start to unlock the time. So this is the bare minimum 10 systems that every single online fitness coach needs, and they're categorized into these kind of 10 stations. The first one is lead tracking, lead generation, conversion, onboarding, client management, check-ins, call management, social proof, finance, and offboarding. So let's have a look at each of these here. The first thing is, actually, let me move my mouse out of the way for you. There you go. The first thing is lead tracking. We need to make sure that every single lead that we have has a stage. They have a next contact date. They populate from the different sources, like our applications, our call bookings, our Instagram, like DM keywords. We have identity matching, so that if somebody opts in for a lead magnet, but they also had an application, they also booked a call, that we know that is one contact, and we start to actually build a lead profile, so we're not having multiple versions of the same contact. You use Google Sheets or like or sometimes even Go High Level with something like that, you'll end up with multiple contacts. And then we have the stage, like they should be moving along themselves. So if somebody opts in for a lead magnet, it should tag them. Then if they book a call, it should move them there. If they fill in an application, it should move them there. If they opt into another lead magnet, it should update their profile. And then all of that should build out your daily kind of follow-up list or your daily contact list to be like, hey, here's all these people that me or my VA must contact today. Here's exactly why. Here's when they're contacted last. And then we have one place to store all that. And then all of the data tracking that normally is a bit of a pain, like what's our show rate, our close rate, our clicks to conversion on this lead magnet, which lead magnet is actually bringing in the most leads versus what one actually brought us in the most clients, and all this kind of stuff. That data tracking should then be done on its own from all of these things happening, where you'll be able to make decisions then based off that. The next thing is you need a lead generation system. So yes, we plug the hole, we make sure that we're not losing any leads. Now we need to get more leads in the door. So you need some sort of a system in terms of lead generation. Could be different lead magnets that you use, but the lead magnet is just to get them in the door. It's what happens as soon as they go in the door. That's really important. So we need to make sure that they go in the door from the first lead magnet. From there, we capture the lead. And there's different ways that we do it. You could be through a ManyChat automation where they'll DM a keyword and then you basically get their email address and stuff like that off them. It could be through just a landing page where it's like, right, pop in the email address, pop in the first name, pop in Instagram handle, phone number, whatever it is, and then you get access. Or the product itself could have the lead capture inside there where they go through, let's say, a quiz. They get to the end of the interactive quiz, and then just as they're about to get their results, we ask for the opt-in then. And then most importantly, we need to do something. So we need to get those leads, we need to nurture them, and then we need to get them populating back into the first thing that we set up, which is a lead tracker. After that, we have the conversion systems. This is the kind of money-making stuff. So a conversion system is basically just, we need to get those leads and point them in the right direction. So whether that is pointing them to a call, pointing them to the sale, pointing them back to another lead magnet, it is assessing where they are and what they actually need right now. And there's multiple different ways to do this. So if you're one of those people who doesn't do sales calls, you have like the offer document funnel. basically like put them into the offer document, they'll read it, they'll assess everything they need, and then from there they'll buy when they're ready to buy. If not, they won't. You have the smart application funnel. So this is the typical kind of like application form. They go in there, they fill it out, but it will qualify based off price and readiness. We also like to mirror the kind of results that they're looking for back to them as social proof in the funnel. So it's like we're applying to work with this person because we want to achieve X, Y, and Z. It's like, oh, do you mean like this? And then we show them a mirrored result of exactly what they're looking for. That's a really nice way to do it. You can do the audit funnel where it's like an interactive webinar, and we're basically getting them to score themselves as they're going through the webinar. And then that scoring system eventually merges into an application form, which then goes towards the call. And then you have like the VSL funnel where we'll run Facebook ads or something like that to generate traffic to a page. From there, we'll have the VSL, and then that will qualify through the standard like application funnel going forward. But there's all these different conversion mechanisms. And we need one, if not maybe two or three of these to run for different types, but at least one of these bare minimum. Then we have the onboarding. So the onboarding, this is one that like people just massively overlook, and it's such an easy way to massively improve your client experience and then save you a lot of time while actually like making it nicer for the client. A lot of people think, oh, the more manual I am with the onboarding, the better it is for the client. To an extent, there's parts of it where you don't want to be manual. So this is an example of it here. If you want to set up an automated onboarding system, you would set up as soon as they pay, they immediately get access. After they get access, it will then go give them the contract, it'll give them the intake form, it'll give them the booking, and then from there, it'll update them in the CRM. But it's a step-by-step process where everything that they do unlocks the next step, where we don't want to overwhelm them. We're just giving them, here's your one thing to do, here's your one thing, and you keep repeating that process until they're all the way through the onboarding process. And then from there, it's done all of like the data collection and kind of like admin stuff for you. So then you have more time to actually spend on the programming and the personal touches and showing up for the client. So that is why it's super important. Then we have client management. So this is super, super overlooked. I ask people, what do you use for client management? They're like, oh yeah, I use Trainerize or I use Kahunas or whatever. I'm like, no, that's your app for programming. What do you do to actually know who this client is, a link to all their check-ins, a link to all their payments, a link to all their intake forms, a contract, everything in one place? How do we know when they're due for renewal, what their customer lifetime value is? All of this information should be visible in one place in your business. So everything about the clients, click into one client profile and we see it all there in one go. Here's like kind of examples of like what it can look like inside there, but one place to manage everything for the clients. Then we have the check-ins. This is the kind of sexier stuff that people are like, oh, cool, let's go build out this. So the difference is most coaches, they use like a straightforward check-in where it's like, hey, here's your 10 questions. And then from there, they will go like answer the same 10 questions and they'll go look at the data for the client and then they'll reply and everything. Now, the problem is it's not very adaptive to where the client is, what kind of a week they're having, what kind of phase in the program they're in, fat loss phase, a hypertrophy phase, how long they're coaching with you. So we need to make sure that we have personalized check-ins. And the way that we can do that is through like adaptive routes like this. So they go into a check-in, whatever they answer can bring them down a different route. Then that can bring them down a different route. And there's kind of infinite personalization that can happen through the check-ins. And not only with that, we're able to grab like external information out of the form. So instead of being like to the clients, like, hey, how was your nutrition this week? We can actually pull their nutrition and show it to them in the check-in. For example, you'd be like, right, well, here's your actual data from Trainerize, or here's what we have on our app here, or this is what you said you were going to do last week. How much did you follow up on these actions? We can pull other things into it, so it's not just a form. And then that gives you more information. You spend less time digging for the actual data, so you can coach them better. You can actually coach better with better information. So that is one to be done. And then you have the instant feedback dashboard. So as soon as they submit a check-in, there's normally the gap between the check-in and the feedback. And the way that we fix that is the instant feedback dashboard. So as soon as they complete the check-in, they're immediately looking at their check-in and their data all together, painting the picture of what's going on. So while they're waiting for you to reply, which sometimes for coaches is like 48 hours, they actually have something to look at and something to kind of act on based off everything that happened in the week. And then as usual, like get all those follow-ups, like if they haven't checked in, like if they have checked in, all these messages can be automated to make sure that people check in on time and it tracks, like, are they actually doing what they're supposed to be doing? Then we have call management. So it seems like a really boring one, but super helpful once you start doing it. So this is basically every single call that you have, whether it's a sales call, an onboarding call, whether it's a client check-in call, all those calls should populate into like a table somewhere. It should log the call, the date, and who it was with. From there, then you could get the AI summary to populate onto the call with the action steps and everything. And then you could get that to automatically attach to the lead or the client or whoever it was that you were talking to. That way, if you click onto a client profile, you'll see a history of all the calls, and then you can click into the call and see exactly what you talked about in the action steps. If you build out a dashboard too, they can actually see the calls as well. You can do the same with the leads then, so you could actually see your sales calls, and then you could actually run it through AI automatically then to have it kind of recommend like, oh, on this sales call, you probably should have said this, this, or this, or it looks like you lost a client here at this stage, and you'll be able to get it analyzed. Then, wrong direction. Let's go this way. Then we have the social proof stuff. So social proof is a byproduct of the coaching that you're doing. And a lot of coaches skip out on collecting it because they think it's just a case of asking clients for testimonials, but there's so much more. The first thing is a weekly win system. So some sort of a process in your check-in where we gather weekly wins. And then what happens with those weekly wins is important, where we can get those essentially sent to us to be like, right, here's all the wins from the week, and then we can get it categorized. And like some of the stuff is going to be from the check-in, some of it's going to be from client calls, but we can get that summarized into a report every single week that goes out to you. You can have testimonial and referral asks built into the right moment so that if they're likely to give a testimonial or referral, it's going to ask automatically at that point. And then we have the wins turning into content. So if we have client wins, we can run a few skills or automations inside there, where you can have your client wins turned into content ideas or given to you in a way where you can easily create content about it. And then you have the exit survey. So when people are actually leaving, that we have the opportunity to turn that into a case study, a testimonial, a referral, and an opportunity to reach back out to them again in the future. So social proof, you need to have a system for gathering it automatically. And then when you do go for the testimonial and referral ask, that we have a way to actually track it as well. Then the finance system, this is like super overlooked because I think the numbers kind of scare a lot of coaches where they're like, they just want to see like, oh yeah, I hit like 10K, 20K, 30K a month, whatever it is. But the data tracking on this is often hard. But if you set it up correctly, this is kind of the way that it would work. You would get all of your payments to populate somewhere into a database. And then from there, every payment that comes in is attributed to a client. And then from there, we're able to see, right, well, we have all these payments that are after coming in. We made this much on all these months. But if this client is on a monthly payment, we know on this date they should be paying this amount. So we know what our monthly recurring revenue is. Then we're able to see if all these payments are attached to all these clients, we now know what our client lifetime value is. And then from there, we're able to see like, right, well, this month so far, we've made X amount of money and we should have another X amount coming in. So it's going to help you then with like financial forecasting. And then obviously, if any failed payments or anything come up, have automation set up to notify you, because if you're using Stripe, it can be really terrible with notifying you about the failed payment. So have something like that in place. And then the last system is your offboarding. People really neglect this. So when somebody is leaving, if it's the case of you just say, oh yeah, great working with you, go on, good luck, and you take them off all the apps, you're missing an opportunity. So when a client is leaving, they're saying bye for now, but not forever. And they could be producing more clients for you. So what you're going to do is you could set up an exit survey system where it's basically once they leave, we want to get an exit survey out of them. It's a series of questions to kind of gather their experience and what was going on before, during, and after the process. Ask for testimonials, ask for referrals. But if it's done in the right way, you're guaranteed to get a client case study out of every single one of them. And then most importantly, we're going to ask them to kind of commit to something. And then it's going to set us a 6-week kind of follow-up date. And really, it's just an opportunity for us to reach out to that client again in 6 weeks after they've stopped working with us. If they've got the result, great, more social proof. If they haven't, it's likely due to accountability, and then we can reoffer them back into the program. So having an automated system around that process is super, super high impact. Now, the reason that we do these is because they feed into each other. So if we look here, the conversion funnels obviously feed into the onboarding. The check-ins feed into the social proof. The social proof creates more leads, it creates more conversions, and then that's looping in there. The offboarding also feeds into the lead tracking, because anytime someone leaves, we're generating more case studies, social proof, and hopefully referrals as well. But also, they're now becoming a lead to come back into the program later on again. And that's why the reason that like we're building them in this order is so important. We want to stop losing the leads that we already have. We then want to generate new leads to feed back into the tracker. Then these people who are into the tracker, we need a way to actually convert them or nurture them. Then the people who we do convert, we don't want that to take way more time, so that every time we take on new clients, we actually lose coaching time with our clients. So that's why we have the onboarding. From there, then, the people who are in the program, we want to make sure that we keep them in the program and give them a good service. The client management is going to help us with that. Then with the check-ins, we want to make sure that we give them a better service in the check-ins, but really help every single person to the best of our ability. And that's where the check-in systems are going to come in. For the call management, we're going to make sure every point of communication that we have with the clients around calls is tracked. So then from there, we're going to get overall better client results, better social proof. Better social proof in turn is going to lead to us having clients stay longer, end up making us more money. We're going to have better finance systems, so we'll be able to project what we're actually making. And then from there, hopefully this will be pushed off as long as possible. But inevitably, when clients do actually leave, we're going to have to look at this system here. But this system then feeds back into all of these areas again. So that is why we're building them in this order. Now, you could try to build all this stuff yourself. You're like, dude, I'm just going to fucking whack on a Claude Code subscription and we're going to start building and we're going to vibe code all this stuff. Now, you could do a pretty good try at it. I've seen some pretty decent attempts, but I've also seen some terrible attempts at it. And this is the biggest thing. The first one is your time. Every hour that you spend building this is another hour that you're wasting on the coaching. And then you have the tools. What tool do you actually use for the job? Like, do you use Airtable, Go High Level? Do you use Sheets? Do you use Trello? Because whatever you ask Claude, he's going to be like, hey, up to you, dude. Let's go build it together. Then you have the problem of building it the wrong way. So without understanding the actual systems and why you're building things the way that you're building them, you can build a lot of shit that just, it seems good until you get to a certain point, and then you realize that this was never actually going to do the job. If you're not sure about that, go ask Claude to go build you something without going into plan mode first, and then you'll see exactly how wrong the thing can actually go when you start thinking about all the features that are going there. And then there's the risk. Like if you are vibe coding or something like that, it's your actual client's information, and we want to make sure that we don't expose that or send any of that stuff to where it shouldn't be. And or give people access to the business that shouldn't have access to the business. So look, in the next video, which will be linked here somewhere, I'm going to show you like how we kind of think about systems and automations. And then I'm going to show you the automation matrix that we use with our clients. And then from there, I'm going to show you the systems audit that we do. And if you want to go ahead with that, cool. If not, you're still going to have an idea about how we kind of work and what we actually do for clients. So click somewhere on the screen here. It's going to bring you over to the next video, and then I'll explain all